How are you doing? Good morning, Math 7. I'm excited to continue working on Unit 8, Populations and Samples. And what we decided to do is we've been working on calculating mean, median, mode, range, understanding the max, understanding the min, and even understanding something called quartile 1 and quartile 3. We talked about how the data could be broken up into 4 different pieces. Today, I want to show you how we could take all those parts and create a graphical display of the data. And then what we're going to do starting next week is going to begin to interpret the data, whether it's from dot plots, box plots, no matter what it is. So I'm excited. I hope you are. Let's dive right in. So if you're looking at the worksheet that we are working on today, we're looking at objective 8.6 or Unit 8, Lesson 6, which we're talking about creating something called a box plot. Now, box plots are a graphical way of displaying data, right? We have already worked on identifying key components to a box plot, but what I want us to do is just simply is practice creating one from data that we're given. So once again, let's look at our worksheet. We know the objective is create box plots. I want you to look at the bell work as we always do. Take a second to see if you can identify what the median is, what the quartile 1 is, and what quartile 3 is of the data below. So take a second, see if you can identify those 3 things, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you those 3.
Come over here.
I'm going to give you those 3 data points. Okay, so take a second, pause the video. Right now, see if you can figure out what the median, quartile 1, and quartile 3 are. All right, so I hope you were able to pause the video and identify the median, quartile 1, and quartile 3. Now, what I've done in the last couple of videos is I would walk you through how to do the bell work by first listing the numbers in order from smallest to largest. That's the first thing you need to do. If you didn't list it from smallest to largest, you're not going to be able to identify the median, not going to be able to identify quartile 1 or quartile 3. Another word for median, and I want you to remember this, is the middle. What is the middle number? So after you list them all in order, what number ends up in the middle? Now, if you were able to list them correctly in order and make sure you check to make sure there was 20 numbers in total, you would have realized that this is because it's an even number. There were 2 numbers in the middle, and we talked about this yesterday, and you should be able to say, well, there's 2 75s in the middle. So when I go to calculate that, I'm going to actually do 75 plus 75. That's going to give me 150. And then we're going to divide that by 2 in order to get our median, which is going to be 75. Okay? So our median is 75. Now, when you list it in order, you should have also been able to say, okay, well, the lower half, right? That's what we talked about regarding quartile 1. The lower half of the data. When I list the lower half of the data, what's the middle number of the lower half of the data? And you should have been able to identify 2 numbers in the middle there, which was 71 and 71. So I would have did it once again. What is 71 plus 71? That would have ended up giving us 142. Divide that by 2, and we ended up getting the quartile 1 is 71. And last but not least, quartile 3. Quartile 3, when you look at the upper half of the data, now this is past the median, 75, the upper 10 points. When we look at those upper 10 scores or heights of these basketball players rather, right, what's the middle of those upper 10? And what you should have ended up realizing is that there are, it's even because there's 2 80s. So I'm going to do 80 plus 80. It's going to give me 160. Divide that by 2. And you end up getting 80 is quartile 3. So you should be able to identify the median 75, the quartile 1 is 71, and quartile 3 is 80. Now, I didn't list the numbers from smallest to largest, but if you list them from smallest to largest, look to find what's in the middle, you'll see that there's 2 75s in the middle. That's how I got the median. Then I looked at the bottom half, right, after the median, and said, oh, okay, the smaller half here, these smaller first 10 numbers, what is the median of the first 10 numbers? You'll see that's how I got quartile 1. And then if I look at the last 10 numbers is how I was able to figure out quartile 3, okay? I would suggest that you really take time to really try to do that bell work on your own, because I don't want to always have to fully go through it, because it seems like I'm just giving you the answers and all you're doing is just watching the video. So please take time to try it on your own first before I walk through how to give you the answers. I'm going to clear the text, and then we're going to continue to work on what I want us to really aim for today, which is to create box plots. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I don't think it's difficult at all. And the independent / homework problems that you're given are only 4 problems in total. So that should give you plenty of practice, as well as not too much of overwhelmingness for you to be able to feel like you can complete the assignment. I'm going to clear the text. All right, now I'm going to scroll up. We're going to talk about how to represent numerical data graphically. Now, if you look on the right here, you'll see visualizing vocabulary. That is what a box plot looks like. This is what a box plot is. Another name for box plot is box and whisker. And you'll notice that there's a box here, and there's a couple whiskers on the outside, right? That's where it gets this other name from, box and whisker. But nonetheless, there are 5 crucial components to this box plot. There's a minimum, understanding quartile 1, understanding the median, understanding quartile 3, and understanding the maximum. If you know those 5 components, you can create the box plot. Now, there's another component here called interquartile range. We'll talk about that in our after we practice this and get better at interpret. My goal is to eventually also talk about the interquartile range. But right now, I want us to only focus on creating the box plot. We're going to interpret them later. We're going to identify information from it later. Right now, I want us to practice creating the box plot, which means that we need to identify these 5 components: our minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and max. Okay? So let's look down. Now, you'll see how I started this up for you. I gave you all 5 of the points that we need to find, right? Which on a quiz or test, I may not identify the 5 for you. You need to know that those are the 5 that you're looking for. But let's start off by looking at this data that we're given. It's the same exact points that we gave in the last worksheet and the worksheet before, so I'm not trying to trick you at all. I want us to first identify what is the minimum, what is the median, and what is the max. If we can aim for those first 3, then we can identify the quartile 1 and quartile 3 as well. But the only way we can identify the minimum or the maximum is if we write these numbers from smallest to largest. Your first thing that you're doing, if this was steps, the first step would be to take the data and write it from smallest to largest, right? So let's take a second to do that together, right? So if I was looking at the data here, I'm going to use red. I'm going to say, okay, what is the smallest number here? Looking at the chart, you'll see the smallest number is 10, right? Well, we see the smallest number is 10. So I'm going to start by writing the 10. Then I notice there's another 10. Then I notice there's 2 13s. Then I notice there's a 14. There's a 16. There's a 19. And then there's 2 20s. Now, as I told you before, I would always get into the habit of checking to make sure I wrote the same amount of numbers. So I would count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 data values. I need to make sure mine also has 9. If mine has 10, I added an extra number. If mine has 8, I missed the number. So we're going to check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. I have the exact same amount of data values as the original data. Now I have it in order from smallest to largest. Now I can identify the values. Now we worked to identify mean, median, and mode at one point, right? And we identified the mean as the average, and we identified the median as the middle number, and the mode as the most occurring number. But here I want us to identify these 5 values. What is the minimum? What's the smallest number, right? So if you don't know what the minimum is, I would suggest, if you need to, put a note next to it, right? Put a note right next to it over here, right? Smallest number, right? What is the smallest number? Okay? The maximum, right? The maximum is the largest number. Okay? These are good notes to have. These are good things to keep in mind. So that way, as you go to identify the values, you can say, okay, well, what is my smallest number? What is my largest number? So when I look at my data that I wrote from smallest to largest, it's easy to identify. It's easy to identify what the smallest number is. And we can write it right here, right? We can write the smallest number here as 10. What is the max? What is the biggest number, the largest number? And we can see that as, obviously, as 20. Right. Now, what is the median? And once again, we talk about median here. You got to remember the median is the middle number. What is the middle number? What is the middle number? So when I look at the data, because there's only 9 data values, that means that there's an odd number, which means there's got to be one number that's in the middle. There's a few ways you could do this. One way that people do it is they cross out data values on each side. They go like this. cross, 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 and they do it until they get in the middle, right? Something like this. And you'll notice that 14 is in the middle. That's one way of doing it. That's one way of doing it. If you don't want to cross out the numbers to make it look sloppy, I understand that. And the reason why I understand is because we still have to use some of the other data values. So if you cross them out and you can't see them, then you're going to have a hard time identifying what the quartile 1 is and what quartile 3 is, right? If you want another way to do it, right? Another way to do it if you want is to put a line underneath it, right? To figure out which one is in the middle. You can put a line underneath it if you want. That way you don't fully cross out the number, or you can just put a small line. That way you don't fully cross it out. There's a couple ways, but I wouldn't recommend you completely scratch it out. If you scratch out that number, you won't be able to see what the number is. And then we lose, we don't lose the data, but then we lose what we're looking at to find other data values. Okay, so the number in the middle here, as we identified, was 14, right? So the number in the middle here is 14. I'm gonna circle 14. And I'm going to write underneath it the word median or the word med, right, which is abbreviation for median. That's my number that's in the middle. And where it says median over here, I'm going to write the number 14. Now, I need to figure out what is quartile 1. Now, if you remember what we talked about last time, we talked about quartile 1 is the median of the lower part of the data, right? It's the median of the lower part of the data. Whereas quartile 3 is the median of the higher part of the data. Okay? Okay? So these are important values that we need to make sure we recognize and understand, right? So if I find the median in the lower half of the data, this is the lower half of the data. I'm gonna highlight it in red, not red. Actually, that's the wrong thing I highlighted. I'm gonna highlight it in green, because I want you to make sure you understand this is the lower part of the data, lower part of the data, okay? Whereas this brown over here, this is the higher part of the data. And you know what I'm gonna do to make sure that this makes sense? Is I'm going to actually I wanna change this color in this text here. May not let me. Trying to here. Oh. All right. Well, I wanted to change it to make it where it was that color, but instead, you know what I'll do? Is I'll highlight this brown so you can see that that's where the brown correlates with. And then that green correlates with up here, okay? Now, what is the median of the lower half? If you notice, there are 4 numbers here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. As we did before, we need to take the 2 that are in the middle, which is 10 and 13, and we're going to use 10 and 13 to figure out, okay, well, what is the median of these two? And the same way we did it before, we're going to add 10 plus 13. We know 10 plus 13 is 23. Oops, sorry. It's glitching a little bit on here. That is 23, and we need to divide that by 2, right? 23 divided by 2 is going to give us 11.5. That is our median of the lower part of the data. Now, if we were to find the median of the higher part of the data, we would take the 2 numbers at the top here. Well, the 2 numbers at the top here on the higher part is 19 and 20. We add 19 and 20, we're going to get 39. And then we divide that by 2. 39 divided by 2 is going to give us 19.5. Oh, it's my decimal. Cool. All right, and then we get these 5 values. Beautiful. These are the 5 values that we need. Now, whether you're using software-generated shapes or you're going to use by hand, I want to show you quickly how to do both because it's not hard. We have the 5 values, but I want to make sure that we identify how to put them actually on our chart here, right? And how to actually do it, all right? If you need to, take a second, pause, copy down this, and then I'm gonna walk you through the next part of completing and creating the dot plots, all right? So take a second, pause the video if you need. All right, great. So now I'm not gonna clear the text because I need this data. What we're gonna do is this, we're gonna create the box plot. Now, in order for us to create the box plot, you need to have a number line. So what I would suggest everybody do is write a number line, create a number line, on your actual paper, right? You'll see I'm gonna create one. I'm gonna use, actually, let me use the color black, right? Right, and I'm gonna create a number line here, boom, right? You need obviously little points. Right, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be super pretty. Just get the best number line you possibly can, especially if you're using an actual, like you're generating it online like I am here through the software, or if you're doing it on paper, right? It's perfectly fine on paper. Yours might look a little bit neater than ours. Okay, and great. All right, now there are only 9 values here, right? And this is important to know. Notice that I put a lot more than 9 values here on my number line. Did I have to? No, I did not have to. But I want to keep in mind that the numbers here goes from 10 to 20. So I need to make sure I have enough spaces here for me to be able to count from 10 to 20. Now, could I count in twos? Sure. But if I look at the 5 points in my data, I need a 10, I need 11.5, I need 14, I need 19.5, and I need 20. So it makes sense for me to actually go in ones. I want to make sure I cover it in ones. This is important. I want you to, let me say it again. I looked at my data, and even though there's only 9 data values, I'm not going to only make 9 lines. I looked at my 5 values I need. I noticed that these 5 values, there's a need for a 0.5 or 11.5, a need for a 9.5, and the data is not that far spread out. So I wouldn't go by twos. I would go by ones here, and I would try to go from 10 to 20 by ones, right? Which only really needs me to have 10 points, right? I may have more than 10 here. So if I have more than 10, which I'm pretty sure I do, I'm going to get rid of those 10, or I'm going to just leave them as extras, right? But I want you to notice this when you're creating your number line, so that way you're not just making lines blindly. Pay attention to how many actual data values you need and the range. That's why we start off by calculating the range here. The range is 20 minus 10 is 10, right? We know that we need a range of 10, so we need to make sure we can go from 10 to 20, which I'm going to go by ones. So maybe I'll start right here. I'll use my pen. That may help me out. Before I actually do it, let me actually just count to make sure I have enough here. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I'll be done about right here, right? So if you want, once again, I should have first went to actually count them. Maybe I'll get rid of some here. So that way, I'll get rid of it. Oh, maybe just, there you go. Okay, let's say it's like this. Now I know that's very, very spread out, not really evenly separated, but it's okay. You get the idea. Okay, now what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to number it. I'm going to start from here. I'm going to write the number 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and I'm missing one. Let's make this 19, and let's make this 20. Okay, great. So now I have all my number lines here. I have the numbers here. Now what I need to do is I need to pay attention to the minimum and the maximum. And what do I want to do with that? I want to do this. Let me show you. Remember, there's whiskers, right? They call them whiskers because they're like kind of like at the end. So I'm going to draw a whisker of some sort, a line by 10, a line by 20, and this is above the number line. It's above the number line. This is important. It's above the number line. It's not on the number line. It's above the number line. And matter of fact, while I'm at it, let me draw another line. I'm going to draw lines for each one of my 5 datas. I'm going to draw a line for the median, which is 14. I'm going to draw a line for quartile 3, which is 19.5. Right? Like right there. And I'm going to draw a line for quartile 1, which is 11.5, which is right here. Okay, so now you have 5 lines. This is good. This is really good. Now you got to remember it's a box and there's whiskers at the end. So the 3 lines that are in the middle, quartile 1, median, and we also know that the median is also known as quartile 2. Right? So quartile 1, median, and quartile 3, we're going to connect those like this. We're going to connect them to form a box. Okay, like this. So we have a box that's formed, and you'll notice that there's a line in the middle. That line in the middle indicates the median. Then we have our quartile 1, we have quartile 3, and we need to create whiskers that go off of them. Right, so I'm going to draw a line here, going to the minimum, and I'm going to draw a line from the middle of quartile 3 over there to make it there. Now, this is called a box and whisker plot or a box plot. Simple. Now, do you have to do anything else here? No. All I want you to do at this point is create this box plot for all the rest of the data. Okay? After you create them, obviously, as you've been doing, upload it onto Google Classroom. I will give you my feedback as I look at it to see what you did right, what you did wrong. But please get into the habit, if I give you feedback, please go back and fix it. That way you can get better. I don't want you to feel like I did it, it's over. Go back and check to see what you got as the grade. See what I said as the feedback that I'm giving you. That way you can make sure you make the most out of your learning here. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you need to copy down the text, I'll pause it. I'm going to clear it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please, if you have any questions, you can always reach back out to me. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.